students. Welcome to Communication Arts for ASEAN program. I'm Dr. Unalom Chanrung Manikun. I'm a lecturer of the Communication Arts School of Sukhothai Thammathirat. So today we're gonna look at the module 17704, which is Comparative Communication Studies for ASEAN. The first module, or module 1, we're going to look at lesson 1.1, which is what is comparative communication studies. Now, we're going to start at the objectives of the module. So if you look at the study guide, so you're going to see the 3 objectives, which is very important for you because you can consider what you can learn from this subject. So look at the first one. The first objective is to enable students to analyze and compare communication situations in the ASEAN way of life and changing trends in the global society. So what it means, it means that you have to focus on communication situations. This is the first objective. For the second one, the objective is to enable students to analyze and compare different aspects of communication issues in ASEAN and in the global society. So the first one is communication situations, but the second one is communication issues. This is different aspects. For the third one, or the last objective, is to enable students to apply knowledge from their comparative studies to create communications, innovations that will strengthen and unify the ASEAN community. So I would like you to look at the keyword of this objective is communications, innovations. Now, we're going to move on to the first slide of this module. For the first step, I would like you to concern that this subject or this course actually is multidisciplinary course. What does it mean? It means that you need to understand that comparative studies, communications, media, and ASEAN are a multidisciplinary course. It doesn't mean that you look at only communications or media or only ASEAN. You need to look at all the contexts of the society, of the global as well. And it's kind of interrelationship among different contexts. So in this step, I would like you to ask 2 questions. It's kind of pre-test of this module. The first question is, what is comparative communication studies in your opinion before you are going to learn this module? So in your opinion, what is comparative communication studies? This is the first one. And the second one is, why the comparative communication studies is so essential for our ASEAN community. So why? Now we're going to move on to the first question, which is going to link to definitions and the characteristic. I would like to recommend the key reading, which is very useful for you for this module. It is the Handbook of Comparative Communication Research, which is I wrote on the study guide as well. So this handbook, it said about definitions, that comparisons between a minimum of 2 macro level units, which is systems, cultures, markets, or their sub-elements, with respect to at least one subject of investigation relevant to communication research. So if you look at this definition, you can see two keywords. The first one that you need to highlight is macro units. This is very important for you and for this module. The second keyword is object of investigation. Okay, this is two keywords that I'm gonna elaborate more now. Macro units, it means the units that refer to countries or media systems or cultures or markets or other contextual units that you're gonna compare with other unit. This is the kind of the unit of analysis that you need to understand to compare between cultures or countries or markets. The second one, objects of investigation. It includes, for example, TV viewing habits, reporter-source relationship, or other communication patterns. The object is the unit that you need to bring it and compare within macro units. So if you understand these two keywords, I'm going to move on to characteristics of comparative communication research now. So now you're going to understand why we need to understand these two keywords and how to create your studies, comparative studies. So the first characteristics of this communication research is you need to understand that comparative research is different from non-comparative research. In terms of the comparative research, it can explain differences and similarities between objects of analysis against the backdrop of their contextual conditions. What does it mean? These characteristics, it means that the comparative research, it can explain the object of investigation between the different macro units. For example, the different two countries between Thailand and Cambodia. So if you choose object of analysis, for example, you choose journalist culture, you can compare object of investigation between the Thailand and Cambodia with comparative research. So the second characteristic is when you do study about comparative research, you need to concern that it's not only compare between space, but you should aware that it should compare between space and time and function dimension as well. So if you look at the slide, you can see the relationship of comparison in spatial, temporal, and functional dimensions. This is the dimension that you can compare. For example, if you compare between Thailand and Cambodia, or Thailand and Vietnam, this is a comparison of space. It's not comparison between different time and ages. So the characteristic which is quite important is you need to understand that if you want to compare between these two macro units, you can choose the time. For example, media systems of Thailand and Singapore before 2000 and after 2000. This is different type, different comparison. It's not space anymore, it's temporal dimension. So now I'm going to move on to the third characteristics. The third characteristics of comparative communication research is the selection of cases or macro units. For example, systems, cultures, or markets should be performed by theoretical considerations, and the objects of investigation of the cases should be equivalent. It means that when you choose the macro unit, or you choose, for example, countries that you want to compare, you should choose them by look at the theoretical framework, which should be the same framework. And when you choose objects of investigation, it should be similar objects as well. For example, if you choose media systems of Thailand and Singapore, media systems that you choose, you should consider that you want to look at the broadcasting, or you want to look at the newspaper, and then these two countries, you have to put on the similarity: broadcasting of Thailand, broadcasting of Singapore. It should not different objects of investigation, so it should be equivalent. Now we're going to move on to the fourth one, or the last one of characteristics. The cases or macro level units should define clearly in terms of structural, cultural, political, territorial, or temporal dimensions. Also, these cases should enclose characteristic factors that have interrelation with the object of analysis and assist to demonstrate differences and similarities of the objects in different contexts. The first thing that I would like to focus this characteristic is you can look at the first word, that it is the cases. The cases and macro units, they are the same. Sometimes we're going to call it the cases, and sometimes we're going to call it the macro units. These characteristics, that you need to understand that when you set up macro unit, you need to define it clearly in terms of this macro unit, in what cultural context, in what political context, in what territorial context. So you need to define clearly. And also the object of analysis as well, you need to define clearly to make the comparison more reasonable. So now look at very briefly about criteria of comparative communication studies. What should you do about if you want to do the comparative communication studies, what should you do? And what is the good one? This is criteria. The first one, you should set up the purposes of comparison. Why you want to compare media system between Thailand and Singapore? Especially before Lee Kuan Yew passed away, and after Lee Kuan Yew passed away, this is the different time. First one, you need to ask yourself why you need to compare, and what is the advantage of comparison. This is the first one of criteria. And the second one, you need to understand that macro units and objects of investigation, they affect each other. So if you look at the country, and then you look at the people, you need to understand that these two units, they have interrelationship. And this is the second criteria. And then the third one, the third criteria, the macro units. How many macro units? For example, you have unit 1, unit 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 10 units. You need to put all the units under the same theoretical framework, under the same methodology, and also under the same objects of investigation. What does it mean? It means that don't put different framework, different methodology, different objects on different macro units. But you need to put the same theory, methodology, and objects in each country, which is the same setup. Okay, this is the last criteria. So now this is the last topic of this module that I want to focus. It's about and how important of comparative communication studies and ASEAN. So I would like to present in 3 dimensions. The first one is students should pay attention on communication issues. For example, communication situations, people, media policies, media cultures, media practices, media products, media systems, and media activities of specific ASEAN countries. This is we call communication issues. The second dimension, we need to realize importance of context of each country and the global. It is not only communications and media that you're going to study in this course, in this module. You need to focus and study all the contexts. For example, political, economic, cultural, and other sociological contexts as well. And very important, students should look at the peripheral, ordinary people, powerless voices, and marginalized people as well when you want to study comparative research. And the last one, the third dimension, is relationship between communication issues, which is situations, people, policies, cultures, practices, products, systems, and activities of each ASEAN country and contextual variables. So we need to consider the effects of contextual variables in the second dimension on those communication issues. So in this dimension, I'm talking about relationship between the first dimension and the second dimension, how it affects each other. So now we are going to wrap up about module 1, that what is comparative study and what is characteristic and how it's so important with our ASEAN community. And so thank you very much, students. Goodbye.